And with these basic facts, I would like to begin our discussion, and maybe, of course, we will delve into the intricacies of the situation.
Sure. Thank you so much, Bishop Mauser, for your introductory remarks. At this point, I'd like to introduce Dr. Swinburne Augustine, who is a research microbiologist and immunologist in the United States, but he is originally from Delices, Dominica. Before migrating to the U.S., he served in the Commonwealth of Dominica Police Force and as a news reporter announcer at DBS Radio. He holds a Doctor of Philosophy degree in Biomedical Sciences with focus on microbiology, molecular biology, and immunology from the Meharry Medical College in the United States. He's an editorial board member of the international journal Frontiers in Environmental Microbiology, responsible for the quality of the articles published in the journal. Furthermore, he has published many peer-reviewed research articles in prestigious scientific journals. Dr. Augustine is joining us via Zoom. Dr. Augustine, welcome.
Thank you for having me. Good evening, everybody. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Any introductory remarks, Dr. Augustine, as we try to put this discussion into some context within the debate currently ongoing in Dominica, vaccination?
It's just for those of us who are in the diaspora looking at Dominica, I think we're kind of worried because we see what the virus has done over here in the United States and around the world. So we are kind of worried of what's going on, but we want to support the people of Dominica and do everything we can to make sure that we get the message out. So that number of total deaths stays at 0. I pray that it stays that way.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Augustine. We also have with us Mr. Thomas Later, who is the General Secretary of the Dominica Public Service Union, or the PSU, and he has served in that position from October 1994. He previously was employed as an environmental health officer in Dominica from 1977 to 1994, and he holds qualifications in environmental health and business administration. Mr. Layton, welcome. How are you? And, can you provide us with some introductory remarks?
Good evening, and thank you very much, Smith. Well, we have to understand and we have to recognize that we are dealing with a very, very serious matter, and that we all should be involved in doing something about the situation. A little more than 1% of our population will soon be affected based on the current trend of what is happening. When you think of a population of about 70,000 people, and we are rapidly approaching the 700 confirmed cases, that is a matter that we should be worried about. We know for a fact that there is enough vaccine on island to inoculate about 50% of our population. That information was revealed to us sometimes in March. And it is a fact that vaccine is the way to go to achieve, if we want to achieve what is referred to as herd immunity, then vaccine is the way to go. And when we speak of herd immunity, what we are saying is that a large percentage of the community becomes immune, making the spread from person to person unlikely. And how do we get there? We can only get there with vaccination. And we definitely cannot go, or I'm sure none of us would want to see us going through the experience of Italy in the early stages of the problem, or to experience what Brazil is presently experiencing because of the Delta strain. If vaccine is not mandatory, we have to seriously consider doing it voluntarily. I must say that I am very happy that in April, I had my first shot of the vaccine, and in May, I think May 11th, I had my second shot. And it took me some time to make that decision. But after it was done, I want to say that I didn't have any problem. To me, it was just a normal vaccination that I had. Now, the other point I want to make is, when you look at ILO Convention 155, it provides fundamental principles and essential tools for governments, employers, and workers to establish such practice to provide for safety and health at work. I want to stress that point, that the worker, the employee, has a responsibility to make his workplace safe for himself and for others. And I think one of the ways we can do that is by ensuring that we are vaccinated. Because if we are vaccinated, we not only protect ourselves, we protect our co-workers, we protect our communities, and we protect the population by extension. So before we even get into the discussion, my appeal is for people to seriously consider getting this vaccine done, because I believe there is no other way. It is the vaccine and following all the protocols that have been established, and also obeying the curfew orders that have been put in place.
Thank you, Mr. Later, for that local context, and we certainly take note of the point about the responsibility of the employee within the workplace to keep not only himself or herself safe, but his co-workers and the wider community. Our final panelist, our fourth panelist, is Mr. Brenton Hilaire, who is representing the business community. He is the Senior Vice President of Dominica's Association of Industry and Commerce, the DAIC, the leading private sector representative body in Dominica. He is also the agency manager of Surgical Life Dominica and has been in that position from January 2016. Brenton is a certified John C. Maxwell coach, teacher, trainer, and speaker, as well as a member of several national boards, to include the National Standards Council, and he previously served as a director of the National Bank of Dominica Limited. It's a pleasure to have you join us tonight, Mr. Hilaire, via Zoom. Good evening and welcome to the discussion.
Good evening, Dion, and good evening to my fellow panelists, also to the listeners in Dominica, regionally and internationally. Thank you for having me here today to represent the private sector interests. And I really think that this is a timely intervention, because what COVID-19 has taught us is that you cannot isolate the effects and the impact that it has had on society. We cannot just say that it's the religious community being affected, or its employees, or it's the private sector. But as we have seen in Dominica firsthand, is that it touches on every facet of society. And that's why, in order for us to address the situation and really bring it under control, it requires the efforts of everyone coming together, unified with one purpose of bringing a solution to this current pandemic. Now, we understand that there isn't one method of addressing the situation. Yes, you have to practice the protocols, physical distancing, washing your hands and whatnot, but that in itself is not the only thing that should be done. Just like you have vehicles. In your motor vehicle, you have the seat belt to protect you. You still have the airbag to protect you, all with the means of keeping you safe. So while we practice the protocols, we also have to recognize the importance that the vaccine is going to have in our fight against COVID-19. So we should not just resort to saying that, okay, I am practicing the protocols, but we should look at as many ways of boosting our resistance in our fight against it. And that's why definitely the vaccine has to play a part in the discussion. And we're grateful to be having this conversation here tonight with so many different persons in the different sectors of Dominica, because as I mentioned earlier, we all have to be unified in this fight against it.
Thank you so much, Brenton, and we look forward to hearing more from you as we proceed and the views of the business community as relates to vaccination. Gentlemen, I want to start by asking, and I'd like to start with Bishop Malzé. Why, in your opinion, is there so much apprehension, so many questions about the COVID-19 vaccine, this hesitancy in Dominica and around the world about taking this vaccine? What has led into that?
You know, when I grew up as a boy, the possibilities in the family was very limited, even in the question of sharing food at home. Whatever you had, you accepted. But now we live in a world of plurality, options, possibilities. And the social media has certainly caused a great deal of the plurality of our existence today. So we have a multiplicity of theories out there, and every single person has access to that. And because of that access, it creates a great deal of confusion. Confusion between intellectuals, it creates confusion among those who are simply followers. And unfortunately, that many people depend on people that they think who should know the facts to follow, and they do follow. And in the end, a lot of people get very confused about exactly what is going on and what they should believe. The other thing is that, and precisely because of the media, everyone becomes an authority. Everyone becomes an authority, even if they're not particularly trained in that field. So the internet today makes everyone a scientist. You only have to read a little on what is going on, and you're an expert. Then we have the discouragement on persons whom we believe that we trust, and we believe that they should have the right information. So there is a great deal of confusion in people's minds, and they do not know what to believe. So the present situation, media and otherwise, creates a lot of uncertainty in the minds and hearts of people. And because of this, I think that's where we are.
Mr. Later, what is your take on this? What do you think is leading to all this confusion that Bishop speaks about?
I listened to Dr. Etienne, who's the director of PAHO and Dominican, and she was saying that the Caribbean sub-region was really famous for the level of vaccination that they were taking for many illnesses.
Oh, yeah.
And it is somewhat disturbing now that we are hearing so much negative things being said about the vaccine. And as the bishop has indicated, we have so many experts in everything, but they do not have the qualification in the things that they're talking about. And that is creating some problem. The other thing is, for those of us who are talking to people, are we speaking at the level that they understand? I believe too often we go above people's level. For example, I am sure some people might be shocked if tonight I start talking in Creole on some of the things I would want to say, because that is not something we normally see on a program like that.
We'd welcome a line or two right about now.
All right. So, you know, that is very important. The other thing is that we have politicized a lot of those things. So even when the thing is in our best interest, because of who it's coming from and where it's coming from, we sort of shut our ears to it, and we are reluctant. And that is why I said sometime on the radio program that I host that we should not spend too much time blaming people. Because when you blame people for a situation, it does is that it distracts other people. And therefore, the kind of attention you want them to give to the matter, they are not doing that. So I believe it is this whole shift in culture. People are less responsible. Our parents were very responsible. We had all kind of vaccines, even though they did not know the side effects, but we were vaccinated among a lot of things, and there are a lot of diseases that have come under control because of vaccines. So we have a less responsible populace, and as I said, our people are listening to the wrong people, because the arguments you are hearing against vaccination, it's not coming from the scientists, but people who do not know much about what they're talking about, and they're trying to discourage. And that is causing confusion, and that has created a mountain that we have to climb over.
Dr. Augustine, you are the scientist in the mix. What is your take on what we're dealing with here? But more so, I'd like you to touch on what are the consequences of this vaccine hesitancy for the population if they're unwilling to take the vaccine?
Thank you for the question. That's a very, very good question. For people that are not vaccinated, and it is clear, the evidence is clear, the data is very, 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 very clear. It cannot be clearer than that. When 95% or more of the infections, hospitalizations and death, and 99% of the deaths, 99.5% of the deaths and hospitalizations is unvaccinated people. Those are serious consequences. Death is the ultimate consequence, and this is not about fear, this is about educating yourself. Nobody's trying to scare anyone. We are trying to give you all the knowledge that we have. And tonight I intend to bring you inside the cell with me. I'm going to take you in, literally, virtually. Come walk with me inside the cell so I can show you what I'm talking about. You will be able to see why what we are telling you is true. We can't make it up. It is exactly why we are alive. So I look forward to having that discussion. It will be a sober, quiet discussion where people will be engaging in it. They will be able to see. It'll be interactive.
Brenton, not only do you represent the DAIC, but I think among us, you may be the one with more of a finger on the pulse of the youth of the nation, what they're thinking, and the views that they're sharing via social media. What do you think we're dealing with in terms of our attitude as a nation to vaccination?
From the perspective of the youth, yes, I am in that category, and just like most, I browse Facebook every now and then. I take a look at some of the comments that I see. And I believe that there is a common thread that is being said through the comments. And I believe it's a thread of misunderstanding of the vaccine itself. And the general basis that I get is that a lot of us think that the vaccine is meant to eliminate COVID-19 altogether. But from our understanding, it was never meant as a solution to COVID-19, but it was meant as an additional safeguard against it. So it is really meant to reduce the likelihood of you contracting it, first of all, from our understanding. And if you were to feel contracted, to reduce the likelihood of you being severely impacted. Now, we know that nothing in life is perfect. Everything has some sort of weakness attached to it, even with the regular medication that we take today. I'm not a doctor, but if you look at the labels of some of these supplements and medication, they will tell you that side effects may be. So we have to understand that the vaccine is like any medical tool meant to really boost our fight against COVID-19, and it will never be the end all or the solution to COVID-19 at this point in time. And it's all around the fact of how can I boost up my system to resist this? And I mentioned the example of a motor vehicle earlier on. When you drive your vehicle and you put your seatbelt on, it's put on primarily for the reason to reduce the likelihood of the loss of life in the event that an accident were to occur. It's not going to stop you from being in a vehicular accident, and it may not even keep you alive if the accident were to occur, but you know that the probability has been increased by several times by just the fact that you're having a seatbelt on. We have heard of people who had a seatbelt on and passed away, unfortunately, but that still does not prevent us from putting on our own seatbelt, because why? We are looking for that additional security while we are on the road. So having a vaccine is really about you putting on your seatbelt, hoping that you do not encounter that pandemic. But if you do encounter that, you're still protected to a higher degree than you would have been without having the vaccine in your system. So I think that's one of the things, the misconceptions that we have to address in society in terms of really explaining how the vaccine is supposed to help them. And I heard earlier about social media, and with the youth, we've encountered a situation, I shouldn't say youth, but I think it's really a societal thing right now, where forwards on WhatsApp and Facebook is now being accepted as quote-unquote genuine news. So someone will make a basis or make a statement based on a forward that was sent, but without actually spending time to understand what is in the forward. And it is said that we all have our personal biases. Now, if you enter into any of those forwards with your personal bias, you're going to support whatever is being said there. So we have a responsibility to really try to look at those things as objectively as possible, removing that personal bias and really questioning the content that is in that forward being sent. What are the basis of their reasonings? What research was done? Does it actually make sense? We have to do that sort of work before we use it in any sort of debate or conversation that we have about the vaccine. And even outside of that, but if you look at the headlines of some of these well-known news agencies, they would put a headline to capture your attention. So sometimes the headline in itself, from what I've found, is sort of misleading. But then if you take the time to actually read the full article, you get a sort of different impression from that. But I don't think we as a nation or we as human beings spend enough time in actually reading things in full. For example, I saw an article about someone who passed away while being vaccinated. The article was written in a way to sort of say that, hey, there's no purpose in being vaccinated. But when you read the article, when I went through it, it clearly stated that this person had pre-existing conditions. And we know that if you have pre-existing conditions, then there is already a challenge in terms of you using the vaccine. So we have to guard ourselves against the media that is out there in terms of they trying to get your attention. And we have to spend time in being objective as possible. And I believe we in the leadership part of society also have to tune our message in a way where it's clearly understood by the public so that we accomplish the goal that we're trying to get at, which is explain the purpose of the vaccine and get everyone as protected as possible. It will never be perfect. It will not be at this stage of 100%, but we have to do our best to increase our chances against the fight.
I wonder
Go ahead, Bishop.
whether I could respond to the question and the consequence of the vaccine hesitancy for individuals in our country. And one of the things that I think that would be the effect of it is the prolongation of the disease among us. So we could say that if we don't do something about the vaccination, we are out for a long haul. Then the question of the economy, it will be progressively affected. Jobs will become more scarce. Families will not be able to put food on the table. the creation of greater despondency among the people, and of course, the resultant greater poverty among us. I really don't think we have begun to think of those kinds of consequences. And these have spin-offs as well. The crime rate.
Yeah.
We'll have more persons on the streets. Then I'm here speaking in terms of as a religious leader. And of course, I ought to give hope to people. But at the same time, it is important to be realistic that there are two facets to life, and they must be like two hands that clap. The spiritual side of us and the social side. And those two have to be together. A great theologian, in fact, one of the greatest theologians in the church once said, that was Thomas Aquinas. He said, grace builds on nature. Grace builds on nature. What it means simply is that it is what we give God to work with that he will work.
Mm-hmm.
If we give God something that is deficient, it will be deficient. Therefore, it borders on human responsibility. What responsibility we have to cooperate with God to make the world into what it ought to be. So God is always available to help us, but we must be responsive. God has given us the scientists, he has given us the philosophers, he has given us the expertise to research and do things and to get things going. But we have to be responsive to that. And in being responsive, God will cooperate with us and make things happen. So we may be able to pray from now till doomsday of how the world should be. If we, on a social level, we do not cooperate with God, it's not going to happen. And therefore, it is so important to see that we have a social responsibility. And in carrying out that social responsibility, God will cooperate with us in making the world a better place for us. So the consequences for not cooperating with God, and in fact, in one of my addresses to the church in Dominica a few weeks ago, I described vaccination as an act of love. A love for self and a love for neighbor. Yeah.
Thank you, Bishop. Mr. Layton, we heard you speak earlier about the responsibility of employees to themselves and to the people they work with to get vaccinated. What role do you see for your union in encouraging or working with employers and employees to ensure that people continue to get vaccinated?
Very good question, but before I even answer this question, let me say that now we are in hurricane season. I have some serious concerns with what is happening currently. God forbids that in the event we are to move into shelters, how will we be able to handle an even higher rate of spread? I don't know whether some people have really given some thought to that. But if we were to move in shelters, we would be closer to each other, and more people will contract the disease. With what is here, it is a massive problem. So you can imagine what will happen if people are to move in shelters and the problem will even be worsened. Earlier on, I indicated that the employee has a responsibility in making the workplace safe for himself and for his co-workers. And the union must be involved in that education, in that drive. So the first thing I believe we have to look at is the question of communication, sharing of information. So it is extremely important that when the employees bring certain things to our attention, that we in turn bring it to the attention of the authorities. Because it is only by doing that you will be able to address their personal concerns. And I'm really making an appeal that importance should be placed on that. So we have to work in partnership with the government and all other stakeholders. And that is one of the reasons why I am proposing that we have an official virtual launch of a vaccination campaign. I believe that is very important. We need to spare no effort in bringing to the attention of the workers, the employees, the entire population, the need for us to address that matter collaboratively. So that is very important. I believe recognition. The union as well as the employers should give recognition to those who are yielding to the call to get vaccinated. And I am saying that some kind of arrangement could be made where every 2 months or whatever, we sort of reward somebody, whether it's a tablet you give them, and so on. But you have a number of people who have gotten vaccinated, employees who have gotten vaccinated for, let's say, the past 2 months or so. We could have something almost like a draw, and where these people are they are rewarded, not compensated, but they are recognized. Let me use that word. They are recognized for yielding. That would encourage a lot of them. I believe we cannot stop on making sure that we provide certain information to our members. And in the next few months or few weeks, I believe, even the union's radio program, I believe the concentration should be on vaccination, right? So we have to do a lot of that. And these are some of the ways I believe we have to encourage people. We have to use every medium that is available to make sure that we reach out to them and to continue to instill in their minds that they have a responsibility, and all the myths about the vaccine, to really erase that from their minds. I hear some people saying it is antichrist. I hear some people saying all sorts of things. Somebody bashed me because I support vaccine and so on. I support that particular vaccine, but I'm saying there are so many other vaccines. You don't have a problem. And you know, when I left the program, something that occurred to me was this: medicine is science. And that very same person who called and said, Mr. Lit, I'm surprised you're supporting those things. I'm saying, how would that person feel if tomorrow the government would inform him, hey, we are granting a medical scholarship to your son or to your daughter? And we know that is what medicine is all about. Is he going to refuse it? I doubt.
Bishop, on that note.
If I can jump in on that point, and I think it's very important what he said. I open by saying that we are in a situation where we all have to work together. So it's not the employer by themselves, or it's not the employees by themselves. This COVID-19 situation has a domino effect. If one person is impacted, then they can possibly impact someone else, and it keeps rippling until we are in the current state. So the employees actually are very powerful in this situation. They can actually lend their support to keeping our economy open, because from the private sector standpoint, the lower our vaccination rate, the higher the possibility of a wildfire spread. And we are currently experiencing that, where we are told we are at 727 cases right now. Now, the question is, what if we had herd immunity? Would we have reached those cases? Yes, there would have still been persons impacted, but would it have been as high as 727 to the extent where we have to shut down the economy to this extent? So for the work of the employees, taking a step to consider being vaccinated and actually being vaccinated, hopefully at some point, they have a hand in reducing the possible quick spread of COVID-19. And when that occurs, it prevents the state from having to take these measures to sort of slow down the spread or to try to control the spread. And when that happens, businesses can stay open. They can open for their full hours. And when they are open for their full hours, they can pay the employees. The employees then are guaranteed money to go to the supermarket, shop, take care of their families, pay the bills, pay their loans. So they have as much as a hand in this process as the employers and wider society has. So it's not a situation where we can isolate the responsibility to any one or two persons in society, but we all have to come together and think about the domino effect that this situation can have if we don't consider being vaccinated for the long term of our country.
Yes, certainly, Brenton, we certainly have to consider the very direct and indirect effects of this pandemic on the economy and on our livelihoods. Bishop, I was about to ask about the role that the church has played in promoting the health protocols that are in place. Are you satisfied that the church is playing its role, and how much of a bigger role do you see for the church in helping us to achieve the herd immunity that Brenton speaks about?
Well, as far as promotion is concerned, from where I stand, I would say yes. From the point of view that I have made repeated calls to the parishes to adhere to the protocols. But of course, there is a difference between asking something to be done and it actually being done. Of course, I have heard complaints about problems that surround funerals, weddings, and even masses. One of the challenges that we've had is that the priest within the precincts of the church would be following what is to be followed, but then outside of the church there is a flock of people mixing with, and he has very little control over that. So, I mean, and this is not to excuse the fact that there have been maybe abuses in the parishes, because you have heard of the lack of the use of or sufficient use of the masks, especially in outer districts. So I'm saying that no one can really go with clean hands and say that we have done everything that is to be done. And even when we consider that this recent surge in the numbers, we could say that there was in the country a certain sense of laxity by everybody from top to bottom, you know, and of course we are suffering the consequences right now. So I'm certainly not making excuses for anyone, but I think we are at a stage where we see the tremendous need from church and state and any forum that we have to see that we have moved, we have shifted a little too far, and we need to recollect and call back. And of course, for the church, I think that you know, whatever that is needed to be done, I am going to do in order to bring back the kind of stringency that is necessary for us to be able to curb that virus among us.
Yeah. Brenton, you've alluded to much of it before by noting that the vaccination effort cannot be only the responsibility of central government. The effort requires the assistance and buy-in of everyone, various civil society groups like yourself and individuals. I wonder if you could just, as we wind down this segment of the discussion, bring us up to date on the level of advocacy that you plan to undertake as a DAIC on this issue of vaccination.
Okay, so we have been active in this whole concept, but one thing I want to get across, yes, we support it, but we always leave it up to the decision of the individual. We believe that this is a personal decision that cannot be forced, but it's our responsibilities as leaders to really convey the message in a way that can be clearly understood by the recipients of it. So we have the responsibility of maybe tweaking it, looking at what exactly we share, how we share it, the way in which we share it, so that there can be buy-in, because when there is buy-in, it improves our ability to get the message across and ensuring that we get a higher percentage of persons vaccinated. Now, in terms of what the DAIC has done, at the start of the vaccination campaign, we partnered with the Dominica Hotel and Tourism Association and also the Ministry of Tourism, International Transport and Maritime Services to get our employees vaccinated. So we actually set up some special times for them where they could go and get it if they were interested. And we must say that the uptake of that was very good. Then we recently launched a Get Tested campaign to encourage employees and members of the private sector to go and see whether or not they are currently impacted by COVID-19. And the reason why we started with this campaign is because of the current situation that we are dealing with, where it has been clearly communicated to us that the key thing is identifying and isolating these individuals so that we can open the economy as quickly as possible. Because the quicker we can open up, the better for the private sector, and then by extension, the better for everyone in society who is gainfully employed. Then we have also partnered with the Discover Dominica Authority and the Dominica Hotel and Tourism Association by launching a survey in the past week. And the survey is geared at getting a better understanding of what society is feeling about the vaccination is. And that survey is open both to those who have already been vaccinated and those who are not yet vaccinated. And we believe that the results of that survey will aid us in the future with formulating our plan in terms of communication with the wider public. In the future, we plan to work more closely with the state. We have recently met with Honorable Dennis Charles and her ministry to discuss ways of how the DAIC and her department can work more closely together in our fight against COVID-19. And some of the initial ideas that we arrived at was having more regular meetings with her ministry, and also finding a way to quickly share information between the private sector to the ministry and from the ministry back to the private sector so that there is more harmony in decisions made, there's more effectiveness. So we are working as best as possible within our means to really contribute towards the fight against the situation, because as you rightly said, this cannot be left up to the government alone, but we within our own avenues have to come up with strategies of how we can support and also build upon whatever is being done at present. So the DIC will also seek to continue on representing our membership and also sharing information with them as it pertains to the protocols that should be followed, the changes that may come about because of the different, activities required to slow down or limit the exposure to COVID-19, and also on how vaccination could be a benefit to their company, to their staff. So we're actively working with the state and with other associations in that regard.
Thank you, gentlemen, so far for these views shared on the issue of vaccination and how we can work around this hesitancy that we are seeing within our society. At this point, we will hear from the microbiologist and immunologist, Dr. Swinburne Augustine of Advocacy Dominica. He has prepared a presentation on vaccination and its benefits. Dr. Augustine, over to you.
Thank you very much, and I'm getting the presentation ready. And the screen sharing is disabled. So I can't share it.
As we wait for Dr. Augustine to set up the presentation, for those of you just joining us, we are speaking vaccination and the importance of getting vaccinated to help fight the spread of the COVID-19 virus. Dr. Augustine, are you ready for us now, sir?
Yes, I am. Absolutely. Getting it ready. Okay. Here we go. Good evening, everybody. A wonderful Saturday evening to all of you. I understand it's a very bad situation that you're sitting at home and you are under lockdown like we were here. The title of my talk tonight is COVID-19, the virus, the disease, the vaccines, and you. I have a small disclaimer for you here, and that's, although I work for the US federal government, I am not representing them here to talk to you. And I must say that because it's important that I don't misrepresent that what I'm telling you is coming from the US federal government. It's not. It's coming directly from me and in my personal capacity. So, we've gotten that, so here we go. Let's just take a look at what we're looking at. The COVID dashboard for Dominica. Do a quick comparison from Saturday, July 31st, 2021 to Thursday, August 12th, a few days ago. And then you will notice that something jumping out at you right here. Total active cases July 31st was 9. One less than 10. And we watched it leap and climb until it's at 341. For you to understand, when I talk about percentage, like if I have $10 and I give you my $10, I just gave you 100% of all the money I had. This 9 and this jump to 341 is like a 4,000% jump from July 31st, 2 weeks, 341 and going up. So that is what happens when COVID starts to get into the community, and then we start to behave badly. I just want you to remember this, because this is what India, the United States, Great Britain, Germany, this is what happens. It starts going up like this. You see those lines? They're going up like this. What I want to tell you is that you see the numbers going up here. It generally takes about 2 to 3 weeks after the cases start rising for the hospitalizations, severe illness hospitalizations, and deaths to begin. We are early in this process, so we have a lot of praying to do. This right here is no joke, because in the next couple of weeks, we will have to be praying really hard that this number stays the same. This one in the black right here, total COVID-related deaths. I've been boasting about that all over the United States, that Dominica is one of the few countries on earth with 0 deaths. We have to stop it. I generally don't do this in presentations, but this has been on my mind. Am I, or am I not, my brother's keeper? Genesis 4, 8 to 9, verses 8 to 9, And Cain talked to Abel, his brother, and it came to pass when they were in the field that Cain rose up against Abel, his brother, and slew him. He killed him. He killed his brother. And the Lord said unto Cain, where is Abel thy brother? Where's Abel? And he said, I know not. Am I my brother's keeper? What he's really saying is, I don't care about the dude. But we always calling everybody, what's up, bro? How you doing, bro? What does it mean to be your brother's keeper? I heard the bishop a while ago mention that taking the vaccine is an act of love. And Mr. Hilaire said pretty much the same thing. And here I am. All three of us, we did not coordinate this. It's the same message that we are responsible for each other. So what do you think? God knew already what Cain had done. So we'll see. So I've already introduced myself, and we've already had more. Dion, she introduced me at the very beginning. I'm from Dalis, and love my country, and I've been buried inside the world that I'm going to introduce you to. A lot of people may think that a lot of Dominicans do not come back home. Some of us, it's not that we don't love Dominica, it's just that we can't. We have more obligations in school and things to do. But there's a link on here that on the slide that you'll be able to look at. So, and I will give the slides. They will have the slides, so I won't bother with it. All right, so let's talk about COVID and the vaccines. What is a vaccine? We're going to cover the history, a little bit of the history of the vaccines, how a vaccine's made, and what is the approval process, what are the ingredients, what are the side effects of those vaccines. And then we will go over some of the other things later. The picture that you see right here is the spike protein. That is, excuse me, this is the SARS-CoV-2 virus. This is the spike protein. The red you see is the spike proteins, and I will explain why those are important, because those red things right here are on the surface of the virus, and those are the proteins that bind to our cells and they get in. And I'm going to show you exactly how it is done. You ready to go with me? Let's go.
If your video has audio, because we are also broadcasting live.
Hang on. Say again. Oh, okay. All right. We'll do that. Okay. let me go back. Come with me into the cell. So for those of you who cannot hear the video, we will have a copy of it. We are showing how the virus gets into the cell and how we deal with it. If you can see the screen, you will see the virus going inside your lungs. And then inside the lungs, it will bind on your receptors on your cells and enter into your cells. The flu virus does the same thing, and many other viruses do that as well. So if you're on the radio, we're showing a video of what happens inside the cell when the virus infects you and releases its mRNA, and the cell makes the components to create the new virus. Then it kills our cells and infects other cells. When the virus gets into your lungs and infects the lungs and start to kill your lung cells, then it goes into all through your trachea and your bronchi and to your alveoli, and the inflammation causes you to build mucus in your alveoli where you get pneumonia. What is very important about the alveoli of our lungs is that that's where the exchange of oxygen happens. Remember, a lot of people die from COVID because they cannot get oxygen. They are breathing, but they cannot get oxygen because all that mucus has clogged up the cells of your alveoli. So you will be breathing, but you can't exchange oxygen. And without oxygen, there's no life. This is the kind of things that we are looking at. We are all the way inside your lung cells. But if it were only the lungs, that would be something, but it also infects your kidneys, liver, brain, and other organs, even your blood vessels. When lungs and your alveoli are clogged up, then you cannot breathe and you can't get oxygen, and that's when they have to put you on a ventilator. But the ventilator doesn't save you. So we have gotten through watching some of the video of what happens to your lungs when you are infected with coronavirus. It gets through your nose, in through your lung cells, and if you can see this video, I would hope that everybody will have a chance to see it, because you will actually see. This is not guesstimating, it is showing you. It's like what the doctors look at when they have a scope going through looking at your lungs, or if you have a colonoscopy. That's kind of showing exactly what's going on inside the body then. Excuse me, I'm not going to play this game. So, what is a vaccine? We just saw how COVID infects you and how it destroys your lung cells, and keep doing it and keep going and infecting others. So, what is a vaccine? Here's for children, especially the ones below 12, vaccines are not available for them yet. So we have to protect them because we don't have one for them. Those vaccines don't cause illness. The vaccines, just part of the vaccine is an antigen that we use to build immunity against the whole virus when we do see it. The video that I'm showing right now is from the Centers for Disease Control, CDC. And it's the exact video. It's one of the videos that a lot of kids see in schools up here. But 14 of the vaccines, they're showing that there are 14 vaccines that they already take. Right? There are 14 vaccines that they already take. So the coronavirus vaccine is not an anomaly. It's just a vaccine. We created a new using an old technology, mRNA, for a new purpose. And we'll talk more about that. So here I'm going to take you again into how the vaccines are made. I've already explained that before by talking on the radio, but this time, if you can, you'll be able to actually see what happens when you're So as we've said before, whenever we get infected with SARS-CoV-2, our cells intake it, it will replicate inside of us, kill cells, and keep infecting. Before any vaccine can be pushed onto the public, it must go through preclinical and clinical trials that are rigorously regulated and monitored. A lot of people believe that the vaccine was made too quickly. It wasn't, the process was rushed, but it's not. And after the video, I will explain why it's not, because we continue monitoring for anything that may not work the way it was intended to. So, okay. We've just had a couple of videos on the vaccines, what they are, what they do. Here's a little brief history of the vaccines and how they were approved. It was in March of 1963. 1963, when they started looking at mumps, the swelling that under your chin. And one scientist's daughter was sick. And 3 years, because his daughter got mumps, he started studying it, and he discovered the mumps vaccine because his daughter was sick. So now we've had coronaviruses for quite a while. It's not new. Since 2002, we had the SARS-CoV-1. In 2012, we had the MERS, the Middle Eastern respiratory syndrome. It was a coronavirus. There are a number of coronaviruses. This is not the only one, and we've been studying them for a while. So we saw just a while ago how the vaccines were made and how they are produced. So it took a rather short period of time for those vaccines to be produced, because a lot of people and a lot of money was thrown at it. Everything was shut down. I keep saying everything was shut down. The scientists had to focus globally. To make that happen, I want you all to understand the level of communication that a scientist at UWI in Jamaica with his team communicating with scientists in Germany and Russia and Cuba and all over the world. And you all are studying, looking at different parts and doing the same things so that you can see whether the results match up. So here, the AstraZeneca is what you have. We saw how in the video how the vaccine is made, and how when the cell is infected by SARS-CoV, how all the parts of the immune system comes together to try to cut it out, get rid of it. We call it neutralizing it. Those antibodies that we have for vaccines, they're neutralizing antibodies. That means the virus cannot cause infection, and most importantly, cannot propagate. It cannot make itself anymore. What's in the vaccine? Salts. Disodium, you all will know sodium is salt, right? So disodium EDTA dihydrate, EDTA, that is what we discussed not long ago. I think it was Thursday night. The EDTA is what's in the purple top tube when you go to the doctor, but it's also in a lot of foods and stuff. They put it in, it prevents bacteria and other organisms, yeast, fungi, from contaminating your samples. Magnesium chloride, that's a salt, and sodium chloride, that's also salt. Those help to keep the pH or acidity of the vaccine close to that of your body. Okay? So, stabilizers to keep remember the mRNA is very, very fragile. It is not like DNA that you can find thousands and millions of years and it's still intact. This one it's a message from a manual. It's a page from a manual that is instructions for a specific thing, a specific protein. In that case, we found that the spike protein was the very immunogenic part of the virus. That means it was essential for the virus. The virus cannot survive without it. The virus needs it to bind to our cells. And if we block it, then the virus can't make us sick or kill us. So they help to keep the vaccine working by keeping the vaccine stable during storage. The active component, like I was saying on Thursday night, every time you look at a medication, they say the active ingredient, the one that is exerting its influence to have that effect. If it's your blood pressure, it is that thing is going to, when it acts, it will cause your blood pressure to go down. If you have high blood pressure, it will bring it down. So that is the active ingredient. Not every part of the vaccine has that an active component. Not every, it's probably one thing, but then the rest, the fillers to stabilize it, to store it, and to keep it at pH that we can use. Now, the adeno, yes, I can.
To the end of our program, so I wonder if you could move briskly along to the remaining key elements of the presentation.
Okay, what, say it again?
Oh, I was saying we're getting pretty close to the end of the program, so I wonder if you could move along briskly to the remaining key elements of your presentation.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so the side effects that we see, COVID-19 vaccine and AstraZeneca that you have, and the Pfizer, look at the number of people that were in each trials and they found both to be safe and effective. The common side effects for both: arm pain, headache, muscle aches, chills, fatigue. And those were, I got the muscle ache and the fatigue when I got mine and was really sleepy. Are they safe? Yes, they're all safe. Every one of them. So we'll talk about the Delta variant real quick. If you're looking at the slide, you will see all those white signs. Those are where the spike protein is the red, and you see it binding to our cells in blue. And then it's trying to change. All where you see the arrows, that's where the virus is trying to change so that the antibodies that we make don't capture it. So, protection for those who are not able to take vaccines. We know, even here in the United States, the CDC just came out with some guidance that people who are immunocompromised or have other serious health problems should probably take a third shot, a booster, and some of us may have to. If you are at higher risk for severe illness, yes, you should talk to your physicians about that. Older adults, cancer, chronic kidney disease, COPD, heart conditions, diabetes, all those things are risks for you. What you can do to save yourself: limit your contact with other people as much as possible. Wash your hands, you hear that? Avoid close contact, clean, disinfect, and avoid cruise travel. There are other COVID concerns that people have, like where did the virus come from? Was it man-made or not? Will it get into my DNA? No, it doesn't get into it, and we saw that on the video. Where it comes from, there are two theories. One, that people were working in the lab and it may have gotten out. Or it came from an animal, which most of the other viruses do. Most of the other outbreaks we've had were zoonotic infections. They came from animals, changed, and were able to infect us, and that's where we found ourselves with this. So no, we don't know for certain what it was. we don't think it was some bioweapon somebody made. More than likely, the sequences are so similar to the bat coronaviruses that it may have jumped from there, went into the pangolin, and taken up by humans. And with that, I thank you for your patience, and I thank you for listening. It was quite a pleasure being with you.
Question. We have heard from the US President and others that the pandemic is now a pandemic of the unvaccinated. In Dominica, we're hearing that many of the symptomatic patients are unvaccinated. My question is, if you've already contracted COVID-19, do you advise these people to still go ahead and get vaccinated?
Yes, absolutely. And there's a specific reason for that. Because we've observed that in a natural infection, when you get COVID, think about it, the part of the severity of COVID is determined by the viral load that you take in, how heavy the viral load is. The Delta variant is 1,000 times, the viral load they're finding even in the noses of vaccinated people is about as much as it is in unvaccinated and partially vaccinated people. However, the difference is that yes, you have it, but it won't make you get seriously ill, hospitalized, and die, unless you have other things. But in the unvaccinated and partially vaccinated, yes, it can. What is also troubling about this virus is that as it keeps changing, it's trying to change so that none of the vaccines work. But then some data just came out in preprint, and sometimes people may say, oh, it's preprint, so it's not peer-reviewed yet. That is the process we use. At the very top of the show, you said that I was on the editorial board of some of the journals, and I'm on the review board of a number of them. So I have a lot of papers right behind my back in my office of papers around the world that I have to review before it can be published. So we put it there so we can get the information out quickly, and then experts in your field comment, and you make the adjustments and send it to the reviewers. Most of the people commenting are reviewers themselves, so it's reviewers that are giving you. So preprint is not something that, it's a very important part of the scientific process, publishing process. So I think with the unvaccinated people, we have to worry, because the vaccine has been shown to prevent the virus from changing inside of vaccinated people. And that is a huge thing, because if it cannot change inside of us, we can just give you what you gave us. But it's in the unvaccinated people that the variants are happening. And we just looked at the picture of that variant. As if you can see my hands, this is how, like a lock and key that you just saw in the video, an antibody. So this is the virus, and this one is the antibody. They bind. When the virus tries to change, you see the spike protein are here, my fingers. It's trying to change so that it let go, see? And then let's say it changes its shape like this, but the antibody is still with the palm open like this, then it can't bind. So then the vaccines don't work. People who are immunosuppressed, and they are actively suppressed because, say, they had a transplant and they don't want the body to reject it. So we have to care for those people. Elderly people, your immune system grow old just like you. It's aging just like you. So it gets weaker and slower, so it needs more boost. So I'm worried about the the rises, and because it's something we see all the time, but there is a way to curb it. Every single one of the countries know it. The masks, social distancing, wash your hands, and most importantly, to save your life and to be your brother's keeper. You want to get vaccinated because that really, really, really is the way we get out. I don't care what arguments people make. The facts are the facts. The virus will keep killing us, whether you believe the misinformation or not. It will keep killing, and Dominica cannot handle. That is the part I am really worried about. I know I am in the United States where we have all this brilliance and all this infrastructure and all these huge hospitals and all these smart doctors around the world and equipment, and people were dying in hallways. Princess Margaret Hospital cannot, the Dominica French Hospital.
Yes.
Yeah, they cannot handle this. So please take another and stop the foolishness. And this is real. This is life. This is real. It is here. It's home with you.
Okay, Dr. Augustine, we hear your plea, we hear the passion in your voice, and we acknowledge your concern. So thank you so much for your presentation and for your remarks, which will count now as your closing remarks. Thank you so much for being with us. And I now move on to Brenton Hilaire, the Vice President of the DIC, to give him the opportunity to leave us with some parting words.
Thank you, Dion. I believe that this was an excellent forum in hearing from different stakeholders in society. And I will always say that we cannot tackle this situation by ourselves. We have to be each other's keeper. And I'm speaking from the position of being fully vaccinated myself, because I did it as one of the early adopters, but what really pushed me to do it was thinking about the people that I have to interact with. I felt that I had a responsibility to them, and not just to them, to my family, to my daughter, to my coworkers, to the people that I meet on the street. I had a responsibility to all of them to reduce the likelihood of me getting them sick. And it really ends up being a matter of love for one another, because the science is there, the facts are there. It's not about the vaccine stopping us from getting COVID-19, but it's about we being boosted in our resistance against it. And I'm quite content, personally, knowing that my chances of spreading it have been reduced significantly. If I still contract it, then yes, that's life. I'm one of the exceptions. But we should never make a decision based on the exception. What is the actual trend that is happening? And worldwide, if you have to read the news, the trend is that those who have been vaccinated are less likely to contract it. And even if they still contract it, they are less likely to develop severe conditions. And I am satisfied with that, knowing that my chances are better. And I am satisfied knowing that my chances of getting someone else sick are better. So I made a personal decision for myself to protect those around me. And as I mentioned earlier, if we all take that stance, it wouldn't just be the aspect of protecting each other, but it is going to help our economic situation. Because no one wants to shut down the country. And I know when the government made that decision, it was made with a heavy heart. The private sector is the lifeblood of the majority of economies in the world, that every time you have to take such measures, you're causing persons to be potentially affected in terms of their livelihood. That's their bread and butter in terms of going out there, making money to take care of their families. And we have to do our best to prevent our country having to resort to these means. And yes, protocols are there. We have to recognize that and always remind persons about it. But what is the end game? And from science, and we just heard it from the doctor, the end game in terms of really ensuring that our economy is as stable as possible and can stay as open for as long as possible is vaccination. But At the end of the day, with all that said, it is still a personal choice. And all we can do in our position is to encourage you to sort of use ourselves as examples in the fight, hoping that if you see that we can do it, and I'm feeling fine right now, having done it for some months, that you too will be fine. So we have to join this fight together. I cannot do it on my own. The government cannot do it on their own. Private sector cannot do it on their own. We all, everybody in society has to come together and make that decision for the benefit and for the safety of us and our economy.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Brenton. Bishop Malze, as we end this program, your final words.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate some things that I have said. First of all, the urgency of really taking hold of the situation with the virus. We need to recognize that the virus is no respect of personages, neither is it a respect of ages. Everyone is vulnerable. No one is exempt. At a meeting which we had last week, or earlier this week, on Wednesday, with the government officials and the heads of churches, we took a decision to have a day of prayer, which was carded for next Sunday. So we're encouraging the whole country to be at prayer for the aversion of this virus. But again, I want to reiterate the quote from Thomas Aquinas that I used a while ago, that grace builds on nature, that the grace of God will work with us if we become responsible. And our responsibility right now is the vaccination. If we take heed, we have a better chance of getting hold of this virus among us. So I want to stress that it is a responsibility of all of us, while we need to pray hard that the Lord will really relieve us of this pandemic, but we too have a responsibility. And the means by which we can do that is vaccination. So I'm really strongly encouraging that everybody, as many as possible, I know that there are some people with health issues, but we speak of herd immunity, that if we have a significant percentage of the population vaccinated, we can say that we will have a safe country. I want to thank you for this.
Thank you so much, Bishop Malze. Mr. Later?
Well, I want to end by saying that we all have to practice patriotism, and if we do that, we will not only be protecting ourselves, but we'll be protecting those we love and those who are close to us. We all have to be advocates for being vaccinated. Everyone has something to do. And we have to bear in mind that every medication that we take has some kind of side effects. COVID brings death, it brings poverty, economic decline, and loss of income. It's better to take the vaccine, and you know that you'll be saving your life and you'll be saving the lives of many people. You will also be saving your jobs. This is everyone's business. We have to listen to the experts and not those people on the streets who may not have much knowledge of what they're talking about. I want to say that I will be an advocate, and I am going to adopt the whole vaccination campaign as my personal platform. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Later, and we take note of that, what you just said about becoming an advocate for vaccination. Thanks to all our panelists who are here this evening to offer some clarification on the issue of vaccination and their views on the matter. These kinds of discussions are expected to continue as we aim to educate the populace on the importance, the benefits of getting vaccinated, as together we fight this pandemic, the spread of COVID-19. We encourage you always to adhere to the health and safety protocols promoted by the Ministry of Health, Wellness and New Health Investments as we endeavor to keep ourselves our families and our communities safe. Thank you so much for joining us. Good evening.